On a crisp autumn morning at Denver International Airport, Dr. Michelle Thompson stood in line at the check-in counter, her carry-on bag packed with medical conference materials. As one of the city's leading cardiologists, she was running right on schedule for her presentation at a prestigious medical symposium in Chicago. The airline staff member greeted her with a smile, efficiently processed her boarding pass, and highlighted her VIP seating assignment, a perk she'd earned through years of loyal patronage with the airline. Michelle felt a small sense of relief, knowing she'd have the comfortable space needed to review her presentation materials during the flight. Making her way through security with practiced ease, she couldn't help but notice the usual mix of travelers, families heading on vacation, business professionals buried in their phones, and elderly couples helping each other with their shoes at the security checkpoint. The familiar airport buzz filled the air as announcements echoed through the terminal. At her gate, Michelle settled into a quiet corner, pulling out her laptop to make final tweaks to her presentation on innovative cardiac care techniques. Her phone buzzed with a message from her daughter, "Knock them dead, Mom. Can't wait to hear how it goes." A warm smile crossed her face as she typed back a quick response. Boarding began right on time. As Zone 1 was called, Michelle gathered her belongings and joined the line, boarding pass in hand. The gate agent scanned her ticket with a friendly nod, and she made her way down the jet bridge, already mentally rehearsing key points from her presentation. As she approached her assigned VIP seat in row 4, Michelle noticed something was amiss. A middle-aged couple occupied her row, with the woman sitting in her designated seat. Maintaining her professional composure, she double-checked her boarding pass before speaking. "Excuse me, I believe there might be some confusion. I'm assigned to seat 4A, Michelle said politely, showing her boarding pass. The woman barely glanced at the boarding pass before responding, "Oh, my husband and I would really prefer to sit together. Surely you can find another seat?" Michelle took a deep breath. "I specifically selected this seat as a VIP member, and I have worked to prepare for a medical conference. I'd appreciate having my assigned seat." The situation quickly drew the attention of other passengers boarding behind Michelle. The woman's husband shifted uncomfortably but remained silent as his wife became increasingly dismissive. "Listen, we're already settled in. There are plenty of other seats available in the back. I'm sure you'll be fine there," the woman stated firmly, turning away as if the matter was settled. A flight attendant named Crystal noticed the developing situation and approached. "Is everything all right here?" Before Michelle could respond, the woman cut in. "Everything's fine. She was just looking for a seat in the back." Michelle felt a familiar weight in her chest, one she'd experienced too many times before in her professional life. She turned to Crystal, her voice steady but tired. "I have a VIP seat assignment for 4A, which this passenger is currently occupying and refusing to vacate." Crystal requested to see both boarding passes, and her expression shifted as she reviewed them. "Ma'am," she addressed the seated woman, "this seat is indeed assigned to Dr. Thompson. I'll need you to move to your assigned seat." The woman's face flushed red. "This is ridiculous. We paid good money for these tickets, and now you're going to make us separate just because she's making a fuss?" Other passengers had begun to slow their boarding, watching the scene unfold. Michelle stood quietly, her years of handling difficult situations in the emergency room helping her maintain her composure. Crystal's voice remained professional but took on a firmer tone. "Ma'am, seat assignments are binding, and Dr. Thompson is a VIP member who specifically selected this seat. Your assigned seat is in row 15. If you refuse to move to your proper seat, I'll need to contact the lead flight attendant and possibly the captain." The woman's husband finally spoke up, "Honey, let's just move to our assigned seats. We're holding up the whole plane." But his wife wasn't finished. "I want to speak to your supervisor immediately. This is completely unacceptable treatment." Crystal didn't hesitate. "Of course. I'll call the lead flight attendant right now." She reached for her phone and made a quick call. Within minutes, the lead flight attendant arrived, followed by the gate supervisor. As they approached, Michelle could hear fragments of rushed conversations behind her as other passengers discussed the situation in hushed tones. The gate supervisor, a tall woman with graying hair, quickly assessed the situation. She reviewed the boarding passes once more and then addressed the couple directly. "You have two options: move to your assigned seats immediately, or we'll need to escort you off the aircraft. This is non-negotiable." The firmness in her voice seemed to finally break through. The woman gathered her belongings, muttering under her breath about preferential treatment as her husband guided her toward their actual seats in row 15. As Michelle finally settled into her seat, Crystal approached with a sympathetic smile. "Dr. Thompson, I'm so sorry for this inconvenience. Would you like a complimentary beverage once we're in the air?" Michelle smiled back, grateful for the support but still processing the experience. "Thank you, Crystal. I appreciate your help in handling the situation." As other passengers continued boarding, several nodded encouragingly at Michelle or offered small smiles of support. An elderly gentleman across the aisle leaned over and whispered, "You handled that with incredible grace, Doctor." The remainder of the boarding process proceeded without incident, but Michelle found her mind wandering from her presentation materials. She pulled out her phone and began typing an email to the airline's customer service department, detailing the incident. Not to complain, but to ensure it was documented and to acknowledge the professional handling of the situation by Crystal and the other staff members. Just before takeoff, Michelle received a notification on her phone. The airline's customer service had already responded, apologizing for the incident and upgrading her return flight to first class. They also added bonus miles to her account and assured her the incident would be thoroughly reviewed to prevent similar situations in the future. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Michelle reflected on how a simple seat assignment had escalated into something much more significant. She thought about her daughter, about the countless other professionals who faced similar situations, and about the importance of standing firm in the face of injustice, no matter how small it might seem. The incident had shaken her more than she wanted to admit, but it had also shown her something powerful, that for every person who might try to dismiss or diminish her, there were others willing to stand up and support what was right. The compassionate responses from the flight crew and fellow passengers had turned what could have been a purely negative experience into a reminder of human dignity and professionalism. As the plane lifted off the runway, Michelle opened her laptop, returning her focus to the presentation she would deliver in Chicago. She had a room full of medical professionals to inspire, and this morning's events had given her an unexpected addition to her talking points about persistence, professionalism, and the importance of treating everyone with respect in the medical field. The story was far from over, but as Michelle reviewed her slides, she knew that what happened next would depend not just on airline policies or customer service responses, but on the broader conversation about respect, dignity, and equal treatment in all aspects of life. The flight to Chicago progressed smoothly, but the morning's incident had sparked something unexpected on social media. Unknown to Michelle, a passenger seated a few rows behind had discreetly recorded parts of the confrontation. By the time the plane landed at O'Hare International Airport, the video had already begun circulating on various platforms. Michelle was focused on gathering her belongings and making her way to the medical conference when her phone suddenly began buzzing with notifications. Her daughter's name flashed across the screen repeatedly, followed by messages from colleagues and friends. Stepping into the terminal, she finally answered her daughter's call. "Mom, have you seen what's happening online?" Her daughter's voice was a mix of concern and excitement. "Someone posted a video of what happened on your flight. It's going viral, and people are calling you the dignified doctor because of how you handled yourself." Michelle felt her stomach tighten. As a private person who preferred to stay out of the spotlight, the idea of being at the center of a viral moment made her uncomfortable. "I need to focus on my presentation right now, sweetheart. We'll talk about this later," she managed to say, trying to maintain her composure. Making her way to the taxi stand, Michelle couldn't help but notice several people glancing at her with recognition. A young medical student approached her tentatively. "Dr. Thompson? I'm attending your presentation today. What happened to you on that flight? It happens to me too sometimes. Thank you for standing your ground with such grace." The genuine emotion in the student's voice touched Michelle deeply. She smiled warmly. "Sometimes the hardest part of our journey isn't the medicine, it's being strong enough to take up the space we've earned. I'll see you at the presentation." At the conference center, Michelle tried to push the morning's events to the back of her mind. She was here to present groundbreaking research on minimally invasive cardiac procedures, not to become a social media sensation. But as she prepared in the speaker's room, her phone kept lighting up with messages of support from around the country. The conference organizer, Dr. Patricia Chen, rushed in with a concerned look. "Michelle, we've been receiving calls from media outlets. They want to know if you'd be willing to comment on what happened this morning. The video has really struck a chord with people." Michelle took a deep breath, straightening her blazer. "Right now, my priority is sharing our cardiac care research with the medical community. That's why I'm here." Dr. Chen nodded understanding, but added gently, "Sometimes the platform we're given isn't the one we expected. Your handling of that situation is resonating with thousands of professionals who've faced similar treatment. Would you consider addressing it briefly during your introduction?" Looking at her presentation notes, Michelle thought about the young medical student she'd met earlier. Perhaps there was a way to connect this morning's experience to the larger message about persistence and excellence in medicine. As she stepped onto the stage, the audience's applause seemed warmer, more personal than usual. Many faces showed clear recognition, they'd seen the video. Instead of ignoring the elephant in the room, Michelle decided to address it head-on. "Before we dive into cardiac care innovations," she began, "I want to acknowledge something. Many of you may have seen a video from my flight this morning. While that incident was unfortunate, it highlights something we all know: in medicine, as in life, we sometimes face obstacles that have nothing to do with our qualifications or capabilities." The room fell completely silent, hundreds of medical professionals hanging on her every word. "But here's what I want to focus on," Michelle continued, her voice growing stronger. "When that flight attendant stood up for what was right, when fellow passengers showed their support through small gestures, they demonstrated the same principles we strive for in medicine: dignity, respect, and standing firm in doing what's right. Now, let's talk about how we can bring that same dedication to improving cardiac care for all our patients." Her presentation was met with a standing ovation, but it wasn't just about the medical content anymore. She had connected with her audience on a deeper level, turning a difficult personal experience into a moment of shared understanding and professional solidarity. During the lunch break, Michelle finally had a chance to properly review her social media. The video had been viewed millions of times, with countless comments sharing similar experiences and praising her composure. But what caught her attention were the responses from major airlines and corporate leaders. Several airlines had issued statements reinforcing their commitment to treating all passengers with respect and dignity. Corporate diversity officers were sharing the video as an example of both what needs to change and how staff should properly handle such situations. The airline she'd flown with that morning had released a comprehensive statement: "We are deeply sorry for Dr. Thompson's experience this morning. The actions of our crew members exemplify our values, and we are reviewing our policies to ensure all passengers are treated with the respect they deserve. We will be using this incident as a training opportunity across our organization." As Michelle scrolled through the responses, she received an unexpected call. It was from the airline's Vice President of Customer Experience, personally reaching out to apologize and invite her to participate in their staff training programs. "Your experience and how you handled it could help us create lasting change," the VP explained. By the end of the conference day, what had started as a disturbing incident had transformed into something much more significant. News outlets were requesting interviews, professional organizations were asking her to speak at their events, and social media was flooded with discussions about respect, dignity, and standing up against casual discrimination. In her hotel room that evening, Michelle finally had a moment to process everything. She called her daughter, who had been monitoring the situation all day. "Mom, you've started a movement without even trying," her daughter said proudly. "People are sharing their own stories and talking about real changes needed in corporate policies." Michelle thought carefully about her next steps. She had never sought the spotlight, but she recognized that sometimes leadership means stepping forward when the moment calls for it. Perhaps she could use this unexpected platform to advocate for meaningful change, not just in airlines, but in all professional spaces. As she prepared for bed, her phone buzzed with one last message. It was from Crystal, the flight attendant. "Dr. Thompson, I want you to know that your dignity this morning inspired our entire crew. Sometimes standing up for what's right isn't easy, but you showed us all how to do it with grace. Thank you." Tomorrow would bring more decisions about how to handle this newfound attention, but for now, Michelle felt at peace. Sometimes the most important moments of leadership come not from seeking the spotlight, but from simply standing firm in your truth and dignity when challenged. The next morning, Michelle awoke to find that her story had taken on an even larger dimension. Overnight, the hashtag dignified doctor had become a trending topic, with medical professionals, corporate executives, and public figures all weighing in on the conversation about workplace dignity and respect. During breakfast at her hotel, Michelle's phone rang with a call she never expected. The producer of a major morning news show wanted her to share her story live on national television. As she considered the request, a group of young medical residents approached her table. "Dr. Thompson," one of them spoke softly, "we've been following your story. Our hospital is implementing new diversity training, and we believe your experience could really help shape the conversation. Would you consider speaking to our administrative board?" Looking at their earnest faces, Michelle saw reflections of her younger self, professionals at the start of their careers, already navigating complex waters. She smiled warmly. "Send me the details. Sometimes the best way to create change is to share our stories." Back in her room, preparing for the second day of the medical conference, Michelle received another significant call. The airline's board of directors had convened an emergency meeting in response to the viral incident. They weren't just offering apologies anymore, they wanted to create a comprehensive training program addressing passenger dignity and respect, with Michelle as a key consultant. "Your experience has opened our eyes," the board chairman explained. "We want to turn this incident into an opportunity for systemic change. Not just for our airline, but as a model for the entire industry." As Michelle made her way to the conference center, she noticed how her story had sparked a broader conversation. News channels were featuring segments about professional discrimination, social media was filled with similar stories from various industries, and corporate leaders were publicly committing to reviewing their policies. During her morning session at the conference, Michelle noticed something remarkable. The questions from the audience weren't just about cardiac procedures anymore, they wanted to know how to handle similar situations in their own professional lives. How to maintain composure under pressure. How to support colleagues facing discrimination. The principles are the same whether we're in the operating room or facing personal challenges, Michelle explained to the packed auditorium. Stay focused on your purpose, maintain your dignity, and remember that your response in difficult moments can inspire others to do better. During the lunch break, Michelle received an unexpected visitor, the woman from the flight who had refused to give up her seat. She had tracked Michelle down at the conference, but her demeanor was completely different now. "Dr. Thompson," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I've spent the last 24 hours watching the impact of my actions spread across social media. I've read countless stories from professionals who've faced similar treatment. I came here to apologize, not just for my behavior, but for contributing to a larger problem I hadn't fully understood." Michelle listened carefully, seeing the genuine remorse in the woman's eyes. This, too, was part of creating change, allowing space for people to learn and grow from their mistakes. "Thank you for coming," Michelle responded. "Your willingness to acknowledge the impact of your actions and learn from them is an important part of how we all move forward." The interaction was captured by a conference attendee and quickly added to the viral story, showing another dimension of leadership, the ability to accept a sincere apology with grace and turn it into a teaching moment. By afternoon, Michelle's inbox was flooded with invitations, medical schools wanting her to speak about professional dignity, corporations seeking her input on diversity training, and organizations asking her to share her story at leadership conferences. During a brief break, Michelle found a quiet corner to call her daughter. "I never expected any of this," she confided. "I was just trying to get to my conference and deliver my presentation." Her daughter's response was wise beyond her years. "Mom, sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest moments of standing up for what's right. You're showing people that it's not just about airline seats, it's about dignity, respect, and creating spaces where everyone can succeed." As the conference day wound down, Michelle received news that would take her story in yet another direction. A major publishing house had reached out, interested in having her write a book about professional dignity and leadership in challenging moments. "Your story has resonated with people across all industries," the publisher's representative explained. "We believe your perspective on maintaining dignity under pressure while creating positive change could help countless professionals navigate similar situations." That evening, as Michelle packed her bags for her return flight the next day, she reflected on how much had changed in just 48 hours. What had started as a difficult moment on an airplane had transformed into a movement for positive change. Her phone buzzed with a message from Crystal, the flight attendant. "Dr. Thompson, just wanted you to know that our crew has been selected to help develop the new training program. Your impact is already creating real change in how we approach our work." Looking out her hotel window at the Chicago skyline, Michelle thought about all the professionals who had reached out to share their stories. Each one represented an opportunity for change, a chance to create more inclusive and respectful workplaces. Tomorrow's first-class flight home would be different, not because of the upgraded seat, but because she was returning with a new purpose. Sometimes leadership isn't about seeking the spotlight, it's about being prepared to use it wisely when it finds you. As she set her alarm for the morning, Michelle smiled at the thought of how a simple stand for dignity had sparked such widespread change. The story wasn't over, in many ways, it was just beginning. But she was ready to help write its next chapters, one conversation at a time. The return flight to Denver felt surreal. As Michelle boarded the plane in her upgraded first-class seat, fellow passengers greeted her with warm smiles of recognition. Flight attendants discreetly thanked her for inspiring change within their industry, and the captain even came out of the cockpit to shake her hand. "Your story has inspired our entire airline family," he said quietly. "We've already started implementing new training protocols based on what happened." Sometimes it takes one moment of truth to create lasting change. Settling into her seat, Michelle opened her laptop to find an email from an unexpected source, the CEO of a major tech company. Her story had sparked conversations in their boardroom about professional dignity and inclusive workspace policies. "What happened to you resonates far beyond the airline industry," the email read. "We'd like to invite you to speak at our Global Leadership Summit next month. Your message about maintaining dignity while creating positive change needs to be heard across all sectors." As the plane reached cruising altitude, Michelle began drafting outlines for her upcoming speaking engagements. Her medical presentations would now include segments about professional dignity and leadership. It wasn't about deviating from her expertise, it was about addressing the whole picture of what it means to be a healthcare professional. Her phone buzzed with a text from the publishing house. They had already received interest from several major bookstores about hosting future book signings. "Your story is resonating with people because it's about more than just one incident," the message read. "It's about how we all navigate challenges while maintaining our professional dignity. Looking out the window at the clouds below, Michelle thought about how her life had changed in just a few days. Her schedule was filling up with speaking engagements, consulting opportunities, and media appearances, all while maintaining her primary role as a cardiologist. Mid-flight, a flight attendant brought her a handwritten note from a passenger in economy class. It was from a young business student. "Dr. Thompson, watching your story unfold has given me courage. Today, I stood up for myself in a similar situation at my internship. Thank you for showing us how to be strong with grace." These moments of impact kept appearing in unexpected ways. As Michelle read through her messages, she found an invitation from a prestigious women's leadership conference. They wanted her to deliver a keynote address about turning challenging moments into opportunities for systemic change. The airline's training program was already taking shape. They had assembled a diverse team of professionals to develop new protocols, with Michelle as a key advisor. The goal wasn't just to prevent similar incidents but to create a culture of respect that would set new standards for the industry. As the plane began its descent into Denver, Michelle received another significant call. A National Medical Association wanted to establish an annual award in her name, the Dr. Thompson Dignity in Medicine Award, to recognize healthcare professionals who champion respect and inclusivity in medical settings. "Your story has opened up crucial conversations in medical institutions across the country," the association president explained. "We want to ensure these conversations lead to lasting change." Landing at Denver International Airport felt like coming full circle. The same terminal where her story began just days ago now held different meaning. Airport staff recognized her, offering quiet words of support and respect as she made her way to baggage claim. In the parking lot, Michelle found a small group of medical students waiting near her car. They were from the local university hospital, hoping to speak with her about starting a mentorship program focused on professional development and dignity in medicine. "We've been following your story," one student explained, "and we realize that medical training needs to include more than just clinical skills. We need to learn how to handle these situations with the same grace you showed." Michelle listened to their ideas, impressed by their passion for creating change. They had already drafted proposals for workshop series and support networks, wanting to ensure that future medical professionals would be better prepared for challenges beyond the operating room. Driving home, Michelle called her daughter to share the latest developments. "Mom, you've become more than just a doctor now," her daughter observed. "You're becoming a symbol of dignity and change." "I'm still a doctor first," Michelle replied firmly. "But maybe that's exactly why this message is resonating. Change doesn't always come from activists or politicians. Sometimes it comes from professionals simply standing their ground with dignity." Arriving home, Michelle found her front porch filled with deliveries, letters of support from around the country, invitations to speak at various institutions, and even a few book proposals from different publishers. Each piece of mail represented someone who had been moved by her story. As she sorted through the correspondence, she found a letter from a retired judge who had watched her story unfold on the news. "In my decades on the bench, I've learned that true justice often starts with small moments of standing up for what's right. You've shown us all how to do that with grace." Later that evening, as Michelle prepared for her return to regular hospital duties the next day, she received one more significant call. A major civil rights organization wanted to honor her at their annual gala, recognizing how her response to discrimination had sparked important conversations about professional dignity across multiple industries. Sometimes the most powerful statements are made not through loud protests, but through quiet dignity, the organization's director told her. "You've given us a masterclass in how to create change through grace and professionalism." Setting her alarm for her morning hospital rounds, Michelle reflected on how a single moment of standing firm had created ripples of change across so many sectors. Tomorrow, she would return to her patients, her research, and her medical duties, but now with an expanded platform to create positive change in her profession and beyond. The story that began with a disputed airline seat had evolved into something far more significant, a movement for professional dignity that was crossing industry boundaries and changing corporate cultures. And it all started because one person chose to stand firm with grace when faced with disrespect. As she drifted off to sleep, Michelle's phone lit up with one last message, from Crystal, the flight attendant who had stood by her that first morning. Just finished our first new training session today. Your story is already changing how we do our jobs. Thank you for showing us the power of dignity. The next morning at Denver General Hospital felt different. As Michelle made her usual rounds, she noticed subtle changes in how her colleagues interacted with each other. Her story had rippled through the medical community, inspiring conversations about respect and dignity in healthcare settings. Walking through the cardiac ward, she overheard two nurses discussing a situation they'd handled differently because of her example. "I thought about Dr. Thompson's approach," one was saying. "Instead of getting angry, I stayed calm and stood my ground. It completely changed how the situation played out." During her morning consultations, Michelle received an unexpected visit from the hospital's chief of medicine. "Your story has sparked something important here," he said, closing her office door. "We've had more staff coming forward about their experiences, and we're implementing new protocols for handling workplace dignity issues." As she reviewed patient files, her phone buzzed with a notification. The video of her airline incident had reached international audiences, and healthcare professionals worldwide were sharing similar experiences. A medical conference in London had reached out, wanting her to deliver a virtual keynote address about maintaining professional dignity in challenging situations. During her lunch break, Michelle met with a group of resident doctors who had requested her guidance. One young resident shared her own recent experience. "Yesterday, a patient's family member questioned my capabilities because of how I look. I remembered your story and handled it with composure. The senior staff backed me up immediately." The afternoon brought another development. The state medical board had invited her to join a special committee focused on workplace dignity and professional development. They wanted to incorporate lessons from her experience into standard medical training protocols across the state. "Your story has shown us a gap in medical education," the board chairman explained during their call. "We train doctors to handle medical emergencies, but we need to better prepare them for these professional challenges too." Between patients, Michelle received an email from a major medical journal. They wanted her to write an article about the intersection of professional dignity and patient care. "Your experience has opened up important discussions about how respect in healthcare settings affects both providers and patients," the editor wrote. As she walked through the hospital corridors, Michelle noticed posters announcing a new hospital-wide initiative, Dignity in Healthcare, Building a Culture of Respect. Her experience had prompted the administration to launch a comprehensive program addressing workplace respect and professional support. During an emergency consultation, Michelle witnessed firsthand how the culture was shifting. When a colleague faced discriminatory comments from a patient's family member, the entire medical team united in support, handling the situation with the same calm dignity she had demonstrated on the flight. Late afternoon brought a surprise visitor to her office. The hospital's legal team wanted to discuss implementing new policies. "Your situation has made us realize we need clearer protocols for supporting our staff when they face discrimination," the lead counsel explained. "We want to be proactive, not reactive." Between appointments, Michelle received a call from a healthcare consulting firm. They were developing a training program for medical institutions nationwide and wanted her input on addressing professional dignity in healthcare settings. "Your approach has become a model for handling difficult situations with grace," the program director explained. As the day wound down, Michelle joined a virtual meeting with medical students from across the country. They had organized a nationwide initiative called Healthcare with Dignity, inspired by her story. Their faces on the screen showed the same determination she had felt that morning on the plane. "You've shown us that standing up for ourselves doesn't mean losing our professionalism," one student shared. "We're learning to navigate these situations while staying true to our calling as healers." Walking to her car that evening, Michelle passed the hospital's main conference room, where a diversity and inclusion training session was in progress. Through the glass, she could see her viral video being used as a teaching tool, followed by constructive discussions about handling similar situations. At home, Michelle found an email from an international healthcare organization. They were launching a global initiative on professional dignity in medicine and wanted her to be their ambassador. "Your story transcends cultural boundaries," they wrote. "Healthcare professionals worldwide connect with your experience." As she prepared dinner, her daughter called with exciting news. The medical school where she was studying had already incorporated discussions about professional dignity into their curriculum, using Michelle's experience as a case study in their ethics classes. "Mom, you're literally changing how the next generation of doctors is being trained," her daughter said proudly. "We had a whole session today about maintaining composure and dignity in challenging situations." Later that evening, Michelle received a message from a former patient, now a successful business executive. "I saw your story, and it reminded me of how you've always carried yourself with such dignity," they wrote. "You treated me the same way when I was just another patient in the emergency room." Before bed, Michelle joined a conference call with hospital administrators from across the country. They were collaborating on developing standardized guidelines for promoting professional dignity in healthcare settings. Her experience was serving as a foundation for systemic change. As she reviewed her schedule for the next day, Michelle noticed how her professional life had evolved. In addition to her regular patient care and surgical duties, she was now helping shape policies that would impact healthcare professionals for years to come. The final email of the day came from an unexpected source, a medical student in a small rural hospital who had faced a similar situation. "Watching how you handled that moment gave me courage," they wrote. "Today, I stood up for myself while keeping my professional dignity intact. Thank you for showing us it's possible." Setting down her phone, Michelle reflected on how a single moment of standing firm had sparked a movement for change in healthcare settings nationwide. Tomorrow would bring more patients to care for, more challenges to face, and more opportunities to demonstrate how professional dignity could transform healthcare culture. As she drifted off to sleep, Michelle smiled, knowing that somewhere, another healthcare professional was finding the courage to stand firm with dignity, creating their own ripples of positive change throughout the medical community. A week after the viral incident, Michelle found herself standing in front of a packed auditorium at the National Healthcare Leadership Summit. Medical professionals from every state had gathered to hear her speak about transforming workplace culture in healthcare settings. Looking out at the sea of faces, she noticed something remarkable: the audience wasn't just doctors and nurses. Hospital administrators, medical students, support staff, and even airline industry representatives filled the rows. Her story had bridged gaps between industries, creating unexpected alliances in the fight for workplace dignity. "What happened on that flight wasn't just about an airline seat," Michelle began, her voice carrying through the silent auditorium. "It was about the moments we all face when we must decide between accepting disrespect or standing firm with dignity. Today, I want to talk about how those moments can transform entire institutions." During her speech, Michelle shared how her hospital had implemented new protocols since the incident. Emergency response teams now included training for handling discriminatory situations. Support networks had been established across departments. Most importantly, staff members at all levels felt empowered to maintain their dignity while providing excellent care. A young orderly raised his hand during the Q&A session. "Yesterday, someone assumed I was just a visitor because of how I look," he shared. "Instead of getting upset, I remembered your story. I calmly explained my role, and my supervisor immediately backed me up. The whole department culture is changing." After the presentation, a group of hospital CEOs approached Michelle. They had been working together to create a nationwide standard for professional dignity in healthcare settings. "Your experience helped us realize this isn't just a human resources issue," one CEO explained. It's about creating an environment where everyone can perform at their best. During lunch, Michelle received an unexpected call from the airline's training department. The program they had developed based on her experience was showing remarkable results. Crew members reported feeling more confident in handling difficult situations, and passenger feedback had improved significantly. "We've started sharing our training modules with other airlines," the training director explained. "Your story has become a catalyst for industry-wide changes in how we approach passenger and crew dignity." Back at the summit, Michelle participated in a panel discussion about intersectionality in healthcare. Other professionals shared their experiences, creating a powerful tapestry of stories about maintaining dignity while providing care. The conversation went far beyond traditional diversity training, focusing on practical solutions and systemic changes. Between sessions, a hospital maintenance worker stopped Michelle in the hallway. "I watched your video last night," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Today, when someone tried to dismiss me, I thought about how you handled yourself. I stayed professional but firm. It felt different this time." The afternoon brought another surprise. A coalition of healthcare workers' unions had drafted new contract language about professional dignity, inspired by her experience. They wanted her input on making these protections standard across the industry. "We've always had anti-discrimination policies," their representative explained, "but your story showed us we need specific protocols for maintaining professional dignity in everyday situations." During the summit's closing ceremony, Michelle was presented with an unexpected honor. The American Medical Association announced the creation of a new annual award, the Thompson Grant for Dignity in Healthcare, dedicated to funding initiatives that promote respectful workplace cultures in medical settings. As she accepted the honor, Michelle shared a story from her morning rounds just days after the viral incident. "A patient's family member had questioned my qualifications," she recalled. "But instead of feeling isolated, I saw my entire team stand together, handling the situation with unified professionalism. That's when I knew things were really changing." The summit's final day brought representatives from medical schools nationwide. They were revising their curricula to include modules about professional dignity and practical training for handling discriminatory situations. Michelle's experience was becoming a case study in medical ethics courses. "We're not just training doctors anymore," one dean explained. "We're preparing healthcare leaders who understand that maintaining dignity is as crucial as maintaining sterile conditions." On her flight home, Michelle noticed subtle changes in how the crew interacted with passengers. Their professionalism had an added layer of confidence, the kind that comes from knowing your organization supports you in maintaining dignity. A flight attendant quietly shared that they'd recently handled a difficult situation using techniques from the new training program. "We call it the Thompson Protocol now," she said with a smile. "Firm, professional, and dignified." Arriving home, Michelle found an invitation from the Surgeon General. They wanted her to join a national task force on workplace dignity in healthcare settings. Her story had elevated the conversation from individual incidents to matters of public health policy. That evening, during her regular video call with her daughter, Michelle heard about changes happening at the medical school level. Students were role-playing challenging scenarios, learning to balance patient care with professional self-respect. "Mom, you've started something bigger than just standing up for your airline seat," her daughter said. "You've shown us all that maintaining dignity isn't just about personal pride, it's about creating better healthcare environments for everyone." Before bed, Michelle received one final email that brought everything full circle. The airline passenger who had initially refused to move had become an advocate for change in her own workplace. She was now leading corporate training sessions about respect and dignity. "Your grace in that moment didn't just teach me about what I did wrong," the woman wrote. "It showed me how to make things right. Thank you for helping me become part of the solution." As Michelle prepared for another day of rounds, she reflected on how a single moment of standing firm had sparked waves of change across multiple industries. The story had evolved far beyond that morning flight, becoming a movement for dignity that was reshaping workplace cultures nationwide. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for change, and new chances to demonstrate how maintaining professional dignity could transform healthcare environments. But now, thousands of healthcare workers had the tools and support to handle these moments with grace and strength. The impact of dignity, Michelle realized, was like a stone thrown into still water. The ripples keep expanding, touching shores far beyond the initial point of contact. And somewhere, another professional was finding the courage to stand firm, creating their own ripples of positive change. 1 month after the viral incident, Michelle sat in her home office, reviewing the manuscript for her upcoming book, Dignity in Practice, Transforming Professional Spaces. The publisher had fast-tracked the project due to overwhelming demand from both healthcare professionals and corporate leaders. As she edited the chapter about creating systemic change, her phone lit up with a message from a nurse in a small rural hospital in Montana. "Your story gave our entire staff the courage to implement new dignity protocols," the message read. "Yesterday, we successfully handled a difficult situation using your approach. The change here is real." The doorbell rang, interrupting her writing. A courier delivered a package from the National Medical Association containing advance copies of their newest training videos. Michelle's story had been woven into a comprehensive program about maintaining professional dignity under pressure, now being distributed to hospitals nationwide. Opening her laptop for a scheduled video call, Michelle connected with healthcare administrators from 3 continents. The international medical community had embraced her message, adapting the dignity protocols to fit different cultural contexts while maintaining the core principle of professional respect. "In our hospital in Singapore," one administrator shared, "we've seen a 40% reduction in reported incidents of workplace disrespect since implementing these protocols. Staff morale has improved significantly, and patient care has benefited as a result." During lunch, Michelle received an unexpected visit from her hospital's head of security. They had revamped their entire approach to handling difficult situations, training security personnel to support medical staff in maintaining dignity while ensuring everyone's safety. "We're not just responding to incidents anymore," the security chief explained. "We're actively creating an environment where professionals feel supported in standing their ground respectfully." That afternoon, Michelle participated in a virtual roundtable with transportation industry leaders. Airlines, train companies, and bus services were collaborating to establish unified dignity protocols for both staff and passengers. Her experience had highlighted the need for consistent standards across all forms of public transportation. A text message from Crystal, the flight attendant from the original incident, brought more positive news. She had been promoted to lead trainer for the airline's new Dignity and Respect program. "Your story didn't just change one flight," Crystal wrote. "It's changing how we approach every interaction." As evening approached, Michelle joined a conference call with medical school curriculum developers. They were finalizing a new course module called Professional Dignity in Practice, which would become a required component of medical education nationwide. "Students need to learn these skills alongside their clinical training," one educator emphasized. "Maintaining dignity under pressure is as crucial as knowing proper surgical techniques." Between calls, Michelle reviewed emails from healthcare professionals around the country. Each message shared a story of how the new dignity protocols had transformed their workplace experiences. From emergency rooms to private practices, the healthcare culture was evolving. A senior nurse from Chicago wrote about successfully handling a challenging situation with a patient's family. "I remembered your words about firm grace. Instead of getting defensive, I stayed professional while standing my ground. The entire department backed me up immediately." Michelle's phone buzzed with another notification. The hospital board had approved funding for a new initiative. They were establishing the Center for Professional Dignity, a resource hub where healthcare workers could receive support, training, and advocacy for workplace respect. As she prepared for her evening rounds, Michelle received a call from the Department of Health and Human Services. They wanted to incorporate her dignity protocols into national healthcare policy guidelines, recognizing that professional respect directly impacts patient care quality. Walking through the hospital corridors, Michelle noticed the subtle but significant changes in how staff members carried themselves. There was a new confidence in their interactions, a shared understanding that maintaining dignity was not just permitted but expected. A young resident stopped her near the cardiac unit. "Dr. Thompson, I used your approach today when dealing with a challenging consultant," she shared. "Instead of feeling diminished, I maintained my professional stance. The entire team respected me more for it." Later that evening, Michelle received an email from an unexpected source, a major tech company's HR department. They had adapted her dignity protocols for their industry, creating a program that addressed professional respect in virtual workspaces. "Your healthcare-based approach translated perfectly to our corporate environment," the HR director wrote. "We're seeing improved collaboration and communication across all departments." Before heading home, Michelle stopped by the hospital's new Dignity Training Center. The room was filled with healthcare workers from various departments, all engaged in role-playing scenarios based on real situations. The focus was on maintaining professional composure while standing firm in difficult moments. Driving home, she called her daughter to share the day's developments. "Mom, your story has reached my study group in medical school," her daughter said excitedly. "We're learning that professional dignity isn't just about personal respect, it's about creating better healthcare outcomes for everyone." At home, Michelle found an invitation from the World Health Organization. They wanted her to speak at their annual conference about implementing dignity protocols in healthcare systems globally. Her local stand for respect had evolved into an international movement for change. As she settled in for the evening, Michelle's phone lit up with one final message, from the airline passenger who had initially refused to move. She was now consulting with companies on implementing dignity protocols in their corporate cultures. "Your grace that day showed me a better way," she wrote. "Now I'm helping others understand the power of professional respect. Thank you for turning a moment of conflict into an opportunity for positive change." Reviewing her schedule for the next day, Michelle saw how her professional life had expanded. Beyond her cardiac patients, she was now helping heal workplace cultures, showing others how to maintain dignity while creating lasting change. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities to demonstrate the power of professional respect. But now, thousands of healthcare workers and professionals across industries had the tools and support to handle difficult moments with grace and strength. As she prepared for bed, Michelle reflected on how standing firm one morning had sparked a movement that continued to grow. The ripples of change were reaching further than she could have imagined, touching lives and transforming professional spaces around the world. 6 months after the viral plane incident, Michelle stood at her office window at Denver General Hospital, reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had transformed workplace cultures across the nation. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the hospital grounds, where a new sign proudly displayed, "Center for Professional Excellence and Dignity." Her phone buzzed with a message from the airline's CEO. The company's annual report had just been released, showing remarkable improvements in both employee satisfaction and customer experience scores. "Your legacy continues to shape our industry," the message read. "Dignity protocols are now our standard, not our exception." As she prepared for her morning rounds, Michelle received an unexpected visitor, a custodial staff member who had been with the hospital for 30 years. "Dr. Thompson," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "since your story and the changes it brought, I've noticed something different. People look me in the eye now. They treat me like a vital part of the healthcare team." During her department meeting, Michelle reviewed the latest statistics. Workplace satisfaction scores had increased by 60% since implementing the dignity protocols. Patient outcomes had improved as well, showing a clear connection between professional respect and quality of care. A video conference with medical schools nationwide revealed another layer of impact. The Professional Dignity in Practice curriculum had become standard training across medical education. First-year residents reported feeling more confident in handling challenging situations while maintaining their professional composure. "We're not just teaching medicine anymore," one dean commented. "We're teaching future healthcare leaders how to create respectful, effective healing environments." Between patients, Michelle received news that brought tears to her eyes. The young medical student who had approached her at the conference 6 months ago had just been named chief resident at her hospital. She credited the dignity protocols with helping her navigate the challenges of her role with grace and authority. The afternoon brought a delegation from international hospitals, eager to learn about implementing similar changes in their institutions. As Michelle led them through the hospital, they witnessed firsthand how dignity protocols had transformed everyday interactions between staff, patients, and visitors. "The most powerful change," Michelle explained to the visitors, "isn't in the written policies. It's in how people carry themselves, knowing they have the right and support to maintain their professional dignity." A text message from Crystal, now the airline's director of professional development, shared another success story. Their dignity training program had been adopted by airports worldwide, creating a new standard for respectful travel experiences. During her evening rounds, Michelle stopped to watch a new staff training session in progress. Healthcare workers from every department were engaged in role-playing scenarios, learning to handle difficult situations with the same calm dignity she had demonstrated that morning on the plane. "We call it the Thompson technique now," the trainer explained with a smile. "Firm, professional, and transformative." Back in her office, Michelle reviewed the final draft of her second book, Beyond the Moment, Creating Lasting Change Through Professional Dignity. The publisher had already received pre-orders from corporations, healthcare institutions, and professional development programs across multiple industries. A notification popped up on her computer: the latest episode of her podcast, Dignity in Practice, had just been released. The series featured healthcare professionals sharing their experiences of maintaining dignity while creating positive change in their workplaces. As she gathered her belongings to head home, Michelle passed the hospital's newly established mentorship center. Young professionals from various departments were engaged in animated discussions about handling challenging situations while maintaining their professional integrity. Driving home, she called her daughter, now in her final year of medical school. "Mom, you should see how different medical training is now," her daughter shared excitedly. "We're learning that standing up for our dignity isn't just about personal respect, it's about being better healthcare providers." At home, Michelle found an invitation that brought her journey full circle. The airline industry's annual conference wanted her to deliver the keynote address, focusing on how one moment of standing firm had revolutionized workplace cultures across multiple sectors. As she prepared dinner, Michelle received a video message from a hospital in rural India. They had adapted her dignity protocols to their cultural context, creating positive changes that respected both professional dignity and local traditions. "Your story showed us that dignity is a universal language," the hospital director shared. "We've seen remarkable improvements in staff morale and patient care since implementing these changes." Before bed, Michelle reviewed her schedule for the following week. Beyond her regular cardiac surgeries and patient consultations, she would be meeting with government health officials about incorporating dignity protocols into national healthcare standards. Her phone lit up with one final message, from the woman who had refused to give up her seat that fateful morning. She had become a prominent advocate for workplace respect, leading corporate training programs about professional dignity. "You didn't just teach me about what I did wrong," she wrote. "You showed me how to become part of the solution." Your grace that day continues to inspire change. As Michelle prepared for bed, she reflected on how a single moment of standing firm with dignity had created waves of positive change across the globe. The story that began with an airline seat had evolved into a movement, transforming how professionals from all walks of life approached their work and treated each other. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities to demonstrate the power of professional respect. But now, countless individuals had the tools, support, and confidence to handle difficult moments with grace and strength. Setting her alarm for another day of rounds, Michelle smiled, knowing that somewhere, another professional was finding the courage to stand firm with dignity, creating their own ripples of positive change that would continue to transform workplaces for generations to come. The impact of that morning flight had grown far beyond anything she could have imagined, but the core message remained simple and powerful: when we stand for dignity with grace and professionalism, we create lasting change that benefits everyone. And that, perhaps, was the greatest legacy of all.